and welcome. Was that a good radio voice to start?
It sounded like baseball.
What did it? Was it an announcer?
Baseball or like hockey?
Hockey announcer?
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't watched hockey.
No, maybe basketball.
Okay.
The old Bulls announcer from way back in the day.
There it goes. Well, welcome anyway. Let's try this again. Welcome to the Heights Unedited podcast, where we have real conversations about real life like we're doing right now.
Real stuff.
Real stuff going on. We're going to dig deeper into the weekend message as well as answering your questions on faith, culture, and life. But I'm just glad that we're here because we literally had to cross a parade.
We did. We crossed the parade to get here. Which, happy Veterans Day, by the way, if you're hearing this on Veterans Day, which I guess you won't.
They're not because it comes out the next
hopefully
day.
You had a good Veterans Day.
Yeah, hopefully you had a great Veterans Day. We're recording it on Veterans Day, and we are in our studio, which is our downtown on the square offices. And so there's a parade going on, and John and I had to run across the parade to get here this morning.
All those people looking at us like, there goes those Heights guys.
Yeah.
No respect for anything.
I waved a little bit. Did you?
I definitely didn't. I almost put my hood up and was like, I hope nobody sees me because this feels really bad. Like,
it does.
A little sacrilegious for sure.
It felt a little weird crossing the parade, but the show must go on. We did
another thing. We're parked higher in the parking garage than I've ever been before.
Yeah, I didn't know that it went that many levels high, but we did it.
Apparently,
and all
number
to
4
be
exists
here right now for you guys. So I want to thank you for listening, watching, being a part of this show. We love doing this, and we hope that it is valuable to you and to your week and to your walk with Jesus as well. We know that some of you have been enjoying it because we do have another 5-star review coming in from Debbie.
Any sound effects yet? No sound effects yet for the 5-star review.
I don't know. Producer David, no?
Nothing.
All
right.
Okay.
Well, sorry, Debbie.
Debbie955 says, Heights Unedited has it all.
Has it all.
Humor.
Has it all.
Yeah, everything you need. Humor, a glimpse of our pastors offstage, unpacking more of the sermon concepts and questions and answers that matter to my own walk with Jesus. Thank you for going the extra mile.
Debbie, you're so welcome.
Yes.
You're welcome. That's amazing. I would say we're just humbled that you feel that way because we're just out here being ourselves and seeing how it helps people.
And I'm shocked that people would go, I'm glad that we get to see our pastors off stage because sometimes they go, oh boy, they're going to run the other way.
But that's going to be the end of it. That's going to be the end of it.
We're done.
You're going to see us for who we are, and
we're going to have to get a new game,
a bunch of idiots.
New job streaming video games. There we go.
There you go.
All right, but thank you for that 5-star review. If you do have a 5-star review or any review, you can go ahead and leave that in the podcast store. Is that where it is? Podcast store, the app, where you get your podcasts.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
You can rate, review, let us know all
Do you
those
listen
things.
to any podcasts?
I do. I listen to a few of them. I listen to some sports podcasts and other future.
Do you listen to them like weekly, or how does that work for you?
When I have time. Okay. There's not too much structure in my listening to podcast life. There's too many other things going on, but yeah, when they come up, I listen to them.
Yeah, mine are always in the car. So wherever or sometimes on a Friday, I'll put AirPods in if I'm cleaning or doing something. Or
cleaning's a good one. I used to run a lot, and so going on a run, I'd listen to podcasts.
I used to do that
pretty regularly, so I had more of a schedule then because I could get through a lot of podcasts. But now I just eat and don't run.
All right.
It's good for my health. But
eat, don't run, and don't listen to podcasts.
Yeah. How are you doing today, though? Big weekend for you, Grandpa John.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's just surreal. Like I said on the weekend, it's still surreal, and yet it's the most amazing thing ever. Like this, to be a part. I think I was telling you before. Like just to. The thankfulness hit me this weekend of like, I'm here to see my grandkid. Like, I don't deserve that. Right. And just that piece alone is like, man, thank you, Jesus. And then for everybody to be healthy, for him to be just a little rock star already, for his name to be Beckham. I mean, come on. Somebody texted me that used to be in youth back in the day. And, their message was like, we couldn't have, about the name, like we couldn't have hoped for more for you or something like that. So good. So yeah, so it's good, man. It's super good. My daughter from Cali came in. And so just to have her home and get time, and it's just super special.
Yeah. Family all together and getting to enjoy a new little life.
Yep.
Super cool.
How about you?
Good weekend. Just
Get the sports
man, all over the place. We had a tournament. My daughter had a soccer tournament down in Phoenix. So down there, back up here.
Yep.
All over the place.
It goes full circle. This weekend was the first time that I've heard my daughter voice. So my daughter who came from California, she's like, I can't believe what you did. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, I can't believe that every weekend, pretty much, we were driving to Phoenix for soccer and you would come back and teach and then go to work Monday. Like it had hit her because of how,
so there is thankfulness on the other end
it comes
of this.
around. It comes around.
I can't wait for that day.
Yeah, because she realizes now, like her coming out here and the effort that took and what it takes away from her weekend and recovery for the week, and or if their weekends are busy, like they're adulting, right? They're hitting that phase of life where it's like, wait, there's a sacrifice to saying yes to something on a weekend. And yeah, it was super sweet. It was super, super sweet. Sierra, if you ever hear this, you made my day.
That's good. Well, hopefully someday my kids can make my day with that, because they woke up today and said, we don't have school. What are we doing? And I said, what are we doing? We do something every day. Today you are cleaning the house. That's what you're doing. So, all right. Well, part of this show is answering the questions that you, our listeners and viewers, are submitting. You can submit those questions at email address that we have set up specifically for you. We can answer them anonymously if you don't want your name to be used in that, but you can email unedited at heightschurch.com with whatever questions you have. But we do have a question from Eric. Eric says, Pastors John and Todd, I would love your advice starting out as a pastor. What were some of the biggest challenges you faced when you were first starting out?
Wow. That's a good question. First of all, I would say make sure you're called.
Calling is huge.
Like that's probably your first step, because it's hard. And I think if I go back to when I first started, the biggest difficulty for me was balance. Like I just wanted to give and give and give and give. Mm-hmm. And it was just out of zealousness, right? Like you're in this role and like there's so many people around you that are hurting and that you can give to, and then you want the program to be the best and you want to raise leaders and and it's pretty quickly you're just worn out. And then that's where that call thing kicks in, right? Like, because if you get worn out, people are going to be people. What's the saying in church world? Sheep bite, right? And so you're going to get bit at some point, and that's where quitting comes. That's where fatigue hits. And so I don't know. That would be my 2 cents.
If you're not called, it's way harder to keep going when it gets hard, which it will get hard. And I'd say for me, the thing that I didn't guard myself, it was more of an interpersonal thing, is there's all of the overextending yourself, doing all that's 100% part of the game, and you got to brace yourself for that. But I'd say for me, it was the pride of the position that I allowed in for me, and so that's really good. And the first church I worked at was a small little church. There was about 80 people, and they lied and said there was 100. But it was a small church.
They had pastor numbers.
100 or less, or less.
Pastor math or whatever it's
more
called.
Emphasis on or less. And it was a small church, but still, for some reason, it was like, having that position of pastor and people looking to me and everything. Yeah. Having some success in ministry as well, growing a ministry and all that. Just the pride kicked in pretty quick. And the inner dialogue of
what did that look like when the
up.
Pride kicked in? Because I struggled with the exact same thing. So what did it look like for you when pride kicked in? Where did it show up? Where do you look back and go, oh, I missed it at the time, but now I see this was out of pride, or that was out of pride, or...
Yeah. So I think I missed a lot of the little steps leading up to the thing that made me most realize it. And so I think there's a lot of little things that I just started thinking of things as below me. And what hit me the most was when I got to the point of, I can't take that trash out. I'm above that. That's lower than me. And it kind of hit me where I was like, what in the world is wrong with me? And then that was eye-opening to all the other areas that I'd done that in. There's so many other areas to where I had just, even the way I'd given a message, it was way more about what people were going to say about me than it was about the message I gave. And I'd flipped everything on its side, and it was a slippery slope. It started slow, like I said, and then I realized, like, man, I am backwards right now. And so I think that's the biggest
When you
challenge or pitfall.
recognized it, did somebody come alongside, or how did that work?
Just my wife, not necessarily anyone else, but you know, realizing it and us working through it kind of together. But I think it's a constant struggle. It's one now that I'm aware of that when I first started, I wasn't aware until I realized, man, I'm in a hole now. Yeah. So I'd say, Eric, that's one thing you can think about, guard your heart with. And I think I can wrap that all into saying that, if you are more concerned about your heart and your relationship with Jesus than you are about the position you hold, you're going to have a lot better ministry to do.
Yeah, I think for me, the pride came out in the Savior complex. Like I was the answer for every kid's need, right? And quickly that, without even knowing it, slippery slope, right? That all of a sudden, like, not that I'm pointing him to myself, but text me before you talk to Jesus, right? Like that kind of stuff that I just never realized was happening until people in my life began to go, hey, this is unhealthy. Or situations happened that God brought to the front that I was like, oh my gosh, like I put myself as this person's savior. You know, and I would never say that but in action, that's what was happening.
Yeah, mine wasn't necessarily with the individuals, with the ministry as a whole though. Yeah. One of the biggest regrets I have in ministry is looking back at that first church that I was a full-time youth pastor at. I'd built this ministry, started with no students and built it up to 40 or so students that I was just so proud of.
40 in a church of 80 is crazy.
It was amazing. It was just so much fun. And when I left, the ministry absolutely died because I'd built it on Todd instead of God. And when I left, it crumbled. And I was actually proud of that in that moment. That's how messed up I was, that I was like, it can't survive without me. Wow. And then as I got older, realizing like, to this day, still one of the biggest regrets I have in ministry is not building into that ministry the way that it should have been, so that it could. Then the mark of a good ministry is not what happens when you're there; it's how long it lives after you leave. And really I just,
that's a toddy hot take right there, if I've ever heard one.
There it goes.
Oh yeah, and I think first of all, just thanks for your honesty, man. Like that's super raw to be able to admit of like, hey, I completely missed it with this, and I think that's the thing. Like answering Eric, I don't think it's unique to pastors. I think it's anywhere inside of serving God you put it, right? And so it can be, you're a life group leader, right? And your life group is thriving, and you're just taking the accolades. You're now seen as this leader, or you're on a serve team and you get put into a leadership position, and it can so quickly flip from, I was just so thankful to show up and serve, to, hey, this is now built on me, right? And I just think, man, thanks for that. It's good.
Yeah, well, as we move on, let's chat about the weekend. This weekend was incredible. We made it to Revelation.
We're in Revelation.
That's crazy.
We're here.
We've been going through the entire Bible, starting in Genesis, and we walked all the way through.
We walked through
in the last year, and here we are in Revelation now. Dude, I love the picture in Revelation that we get of Jesus, because we think of Jesus. We think of the Hollywood dramatized Jesus that we see a lot of times, where it's like, he's kind of like a hippie, and you're like, is he stoned? Is he not? Like, that's the Jesus that you get. Yeah. And I love the Jesus that you see in Revelation, because this dude is a warrior, and it gets me fired up.
Yeah. And it's what's incredible. And I kind of said it this weekend from stage, but that like John had this relationship. So super dumbed down, just for the sake of this conversation, right? But like, pick somebody in your life. So if I pick you, and you and I hang out, and then, well, it's even a different relationship than that, right? Like, pick somebody you're discipling, but they're with you all the time, right? For 3.5 years. And you're at the point where you go, like, I'm the one this person loves. And now you're in your 80s or 90s, and you have this reunion with this person.
Right.
And this person is so different, right? Like that you go, he was like the Son of Man. Like he was like the guy I knew, but like so much more.
But like the boss version.
Yeah, like, exactly. like he showed up and I went, oh, I really didn't know what I didn't know, right? Can you imagine John going back through, like after this vision, going back through and going, yeah, and I told Jesus that.
Yeah,
like,
I said that to him.
Or or looking, John's probably actually going, man, Peter's going to regret that when he sees it.
Right. He's like, he definitely shouldn't have said that. No, I love the picture that we get of Jesus in this moment because it really does remind you he is King Jesus.
Yeah, it's all power. It's all authority.
Power, warrior, king, you know, and the picture itself is a cool one.
Yeah.
But understanding that is the Jesus that we're serving.
Yeah.
That's the king that we serve it frames up the conversation that we have in Revelation.
Yeah.
And so understanding that is super important. And I think understanding more the context of what even the church is important. One of the things you said this weekend was the purpose of the church has always been outward focused love for people.
Yeah.
Why is it so important to grasp and understand that context and to understand this before we even get into the rest of the text?
Yeah. And I mean, maybe the easiest way, like where my brain goes first is, I don't know. I mean, you've been around church for a long time. You did camps. You've done a bunch of them, right? I think it's really interesting that these letters to the churches have been preached to unbelievers, right? Like when I look at what we covered this weekend, we'll take the first love one and we'll preach that to kids that know Jesus. But we would take the second, the seventh letter to Laodicea, and it's an altar call, right? Like it's this Jesus at the door. And so I find it's so fascinating to me how like there's this, okay, these were written to the church and there's a context given. And this is probably was eye-opening for me even in studying it again to prepare for the weekend is the context is the witness of the church, witness of God's people to the people around them, that this was their primary function was to be a witness. And what's called into question is in every instance is, hey, you are failing to be a witness. Mm-hmm. You're doing some stuff good. Don't mishear what I'm saying. Like, I'm proud of you for this. However, there's this, right? Like, however, you need to repent. You need to, and I think that's for me, that whole concept when it comes to the primary piece of it, we've lost that. We've lost that. And I know your love language is, man, we got to get out and tell people about Jesus, right? Yeah. Like we gotta, and I think even evidenced of that is what is under you in Next Gen is that's the heartbeat of Next Gen right now. And that's flowing directly from you. But I think it's so in line and it's something beautiful in line with, we see the resurrected King, and here is what he's calling his church to is do not lose your light.
Yeah. Well, and I, like you said, I love it. That's what I'm all about. I've always wanted that to be the ministries I lead and what the church is all about. But it's super cool to see that is what this is about.
Yeah.
It's reassuring to know, like, this isn't something I just made up. Like, this is where this comes from. This
and
is
what God is going to hold us accountable to. Like you stood on stage, I don't know how long ago that was, a month and a half ago, calling us to the mission, right? Mm. And how critical the mission was. And yet you see in Revelation when Jesus walks through his church, what does he hold him accountable to? To the exact thing you were telling the church about. And I think that's the piece that we lose so quickly because we make it about all these other things.
Yeah, and I think any church is susceptible to that, and most churches have drifted from that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a huge eye-opening thing to come back to and to frame this text.
Yeah.
We're not looking at this through other eyes, so it helps us understand this next statement that we looked at, this verse specifically about losing our first love.
Yeah.
That's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And I think I've had an instance in my life where it rocked me, and that was God kind of coming back going, hey, you've strayed from this.
Yeah.
And so, it was a huge piece for me, but I think that hearing this weekend's message, there's probably people realizing, man, maybe I have fallen away from my first love. What are steps that people can take to come back to the first love? If they're identifying, man, this is what we're setting this up here. This is what the church is for.
Yeah.
It's to be outward focused and to love people.
Yeah.
And I've fallen away from that.
Yeah.
What would you say to those people?
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, like you just said it, and I've been there, like it's easy to be there. So like there's not this deep condemnation of where you are. There's not this guilt, shame, whatever. It's just a realization of, and I think for me, the connection to loving my grandson is the most natural thing because of my love for my daughter. Mm-hmm. So if I genuinely love Jesus, loving the things that Jesus loves, it's the most natural thing, right? Like there's not this big stretch to it. And so I think working your way backwards of going, wait, if I'm not loving the things that Jesus loved, which, love your enemies, love those, love one another, love, like all the things that Jesus told us, like obey my commands was part of loving him, right? Like, right. So I think looking at those things and going, man, if I'm struggling there, then I'm struggling in my love. So then practically, what does it look like to love Jesus? And for me, I have to go, like I did this weekend, go to human forms, right? Like I had surgery on my hand and took the weekend off, the weekend you spoke, and just being home and being present, I didn't realize what it meant to my 13-year-old. Mm-hmm. There was a point where I had sports on and she was sitting next to me and I go, do you want to watch something? And she goes, I don't really care what we watch. I just want to be here with you. And I was like, oh man, like it was just such a moment of realizing what was being built in that moment. I was missing it because I thought it got to be, hey, we got to do this or we got to do that. Right. And for her, it was like, I just want to be present. And so I think with Jesus, there's so often we miss just being present. And so we miss the, hey, I'm going to put myself in a space to hear from God, right? Like, and we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. What does it look like to hear from God? Or I'm going to put myself in a space to have coffee with Jesus this morning. And I'm not going to have an agenda. I was telling our life group team, I'm reading less right now than I have in a long time. And by reading, I mean like Bible verses in my time with God, my Devo, like I'm not rushing through my Devo. I'm like taking my time and just sitting on it. And it has been amazing of just how rich it feels. I'm getting up, leaving and going, I actually felt like I was sitting with Jesus this morning. And it's not always like that. Obviously, like we go through. So there's those moments where just being present, I think it's with people. I think being around people that love Jesus and understanding what is it like for them? What do they do that allows them to feel that way? I think for me, a lot of it is reflection just because I'm built that way. I know other people, it's like, man, I got to go sit with whoever. And that conversation opened up something about Jesus that I get to now sit inside of. But I think all of that to say, I think the biggest thing is going, do I really love Jesus?
Right. Yeah. If that one's not right, then it's not going to flow out of that.
Or is it just knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Is it just, I've fallen in love with the church even, or I've fallen in love with this social club?
Yeah. And I think that's where we can think we're doing well, and that's one of the things you talked about on the weekend is you talked about how sometimes we think we're doing well because of the head knowledge, because of the things that we've done. And it's like, and we're doing good when in reality, we've missed what Jesus wants from us or for us even. Like, hey, I want this for you. Yeah.
Like they're wealthy. They're dressed in fine clothes. People are coming to them for healing for their eyes. Like from the outward look, they're like, we're crushing it. Right. We're as a church, like we're the epicenter. We're growing like everything we just talked about. Right. Like they're like, the ministry's growing and this is great. Yeah. And Jesus comes along and goes, I don't remember all the words, but like you're pitiful, blind, poor, naked. All these super shameful things that you're like,
Well, and I think the context was huge. I was going to say this weekend, I learned so much from this message because I think, I don't know if victim might be a strong word, but I'm kind of a victim of the church preaching this in a wrong way where it's like, I've gone to camps, I've gone to things, I've, heard messages on these statements. Yeah. And not understood the context of any of those things.
Me too.
And so this weekend, I was like, whoa, I learned so much from that. And I think we all find ourselves in a place where we're like, okay, we think we're doing okay.
Yeah.
Just like they thought they were doing okay. And then he's going, I'm going to spit you out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Like, you're not there.
Yeah.
You're not either being refreshing or being healing. You're not either of those things. So I think we all can fall in that trap. So what I would say is, what can we do to evaluate ourselves? Like what would an eval of ourselves to look like? Because if we think we're doing fine, we don't need to.
Yeah.
But I would say that regular evaluations are necessary.
Yeah.
So that we can realize, man, if we've fallen from our first love, and if we have, are we that lukewarm that's neither of those? What would an evaluation like that look like? How often should we as followers of Jesus be checking up on ourselves?
Yeah. I mean, what comes to mind as you ask that is, in a church setting, we have our mission, right? We have our vision, we have our values, and we're constantly asking, as an organization, as a body moving forward, right? Body of people moving forward, are we doing what we're supposed to do, right? Are we seeing people encounter Jesus, engage in their faith, empowering them? Are we helping people live the life they were created? Like, so sometimes it just helps to pull it out of the personal sense and go, everybody would go, well, the church should have a vision. The church should have values, right? Well, so should I as an individual, right? So maybe the first spot is, do I know somebody who doesn't know Jesus? Or have I isolated myself to only like the holy huddle, so to speak, right? Like I only put myself in spaces where it's people that know Jesus. That might be a good starting place. A good starting place is, would the people around me say that I love well? And by that, like, start with your family. Like that's where God's got me right now. Like, I say I love my wife. What does that actually look like? Because what I noticed in my own life is it became easy we're just doing life, but I'm not intentionally going, how do I let her know today? How do I do, certain things today that over the years have just kind of drifted away?
Yeah.
Like the intentionality to it. People always say, like, date your wife and all, that kind of stuff. And it's just same language for, am I being intentional?
Yeah.
And then I think, I think in our culture, because things are going well, maybe from a work perspective, do I think God is happy? That's a huge indicator that if you think God's happiness to you is dependent on how your business is doing or your wealth, like, step back. But I don't know, that comes to mind. What about you? You're so good on practical steps. You're way better than me.
Yeah, I just think that the constantly having that evaluation moment is good for any area of our life. Like, once we get on coasting and being like, yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Usually when we realize how not fine we are.
Yeah.
And so I think just even practically going, God, reveal to me the areas that I need to grow in.
Yeah.
Hey, what just opening it up to the Holy Spirit and to God and going, hey, what?
Yeah.
Show me, because I don't know. I think I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
And usually when you think you're doing all right, you're not doing all right.
You're not doing
so
good.
Just opening that door and seeking that, asking other people, hey, what are some areas that you think I can grow in?
Yeah.
And it's hard to do because
so
you
vulnerable.
want them to say, you're doing great.
Yeah.
But usually we have blind spots
or you go to the people that will say, they're like Mr. Positive in your life, and they're like, you're awesome.
I did that one time. I was asking for feedback on sermon, just how I delivered my sermon and everything. And I sent it to 5 pastors, friends of mine that were from all across the country, just like, hey, what do you guys think? And I sent them the absolute best sermon I'd ever done, hoping that they would tell me how great it was. And 3 of the 5 sent back like, that was incredible. You were amazing. And I was like, that's what I wanted to hear. And one of them actually did the due diligence to like kind of rip it apart.
Yeah.
And when he did it, it kind of stung. And then I'm like, that's what I needed. I didn't need you to tell me everything was great.
Yeah.
So I think surrounding yourself with people, or even inviting somebody into that space of going, hey, how can I be better? What do I need in my walk? How can you challenge me in that?
Yeah.
And realizing that there is always space for us always to be better at everything.
Yep.
You will never arrive. And
and that's such a hard spot, right? Like in any area of life. Like, so it's one thing to put it in a work sense, right? Like, well, how am I doing as a realtor? Right? You can probably get a decent review for that from somebody that would give you an honest thing. But when you go to somebody and go, hey, what's your perception of me as a husband? You're around Cindy and I, like, or as a dad, you're around me and my kids, or you're around my kids more than I am. How are my kids actually doing? Right? Like, which then is a reflection to, man, what am I missing in what I'm pouring into them?
Yeah.
And so, I just think it's such a vulnerable space, but it's such an area of, if you're genuinely looking to grow, I think it's amazing.
Yeah, and then we don't want to be the church that Jesus wrote that letter to, or that John wrote that about. So anyway, so good this weekend. If you did not get an opportunity to listen to that, it's worth going back and listening. Like I said, I learned so much from that, and still thinking through it. Like, man, that's wild. The context of what it means.
And I know this, we got to roll on, but for me with that passage, I've never understood, why would Jesus go, I'd prefer you to be cold if cold is like, have nothing to do with me. Like that's not consistent with anything in scripture.
Right.
Like, or I'd prefer you to be like, or I'll spit you out of my mouth. And it's written to the church. There's nowhere you see Jesus going, I'm going to spit the church. It's the bride of Christ.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's essentially him saying, I'm going to spit my wife out of my, like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And so for me, I've always struggled. And so studying for this weekend, it was like, oh, I can actually teach this and really believe everything I'm going to say with this.
So good. Cause the exact same for me. I've always been like, I don't get that. That seems not in line
it just
with
doesn't
anything
fit.
else.
Yeah.
That's good.
Anyway.
All right. Well, we're going to move on to a submitted question that we have from Catherine. She said, I know that health is holistic, and I've heard Heights talk about being healthy mentally, physically, and spiritually, but sometimes it feels like spinning plates to keep health in all those areas at once. What are some things I could do to stay balanced and healthy in all areas?
So the feeling is being overwhelmed, right? Yeah. So I need to be holistically healthy. And Catherine's asking, that feels overwhelming.
Yeah. I mean, and it does, right? Because for me, at least, when you start, okay, I'm going to exercise, health physically is going to be, well, I sacrificed the time that I would have been reading the Bible, and there goes my spiritual health. Oh, I got both of those going down, but mentally I'm losing my mind because I got no time for anything else. It really does feel like spinning plates in that.
Yeah. And I think there's stages to life, and I don't know obviously where Catherine's at in stage of life, but I think the understanding your stage of life and knowing that whatever I set up now doesn't have to be forever. And so looking at it going, okay, Catherine, if you've got young kids, like, good luck having a consistent hour and a half quiet time or you time even, right? Like, it's just not going to happen. And so you're going to have to figure out, how do I navigate getting quality time with still meeting the needs of my kiddos? Right. And so that's one stage of life. And I think the other thing is, I think the question in that stage is, can multiple things be done at once? So can I make my time with Jesus my walk the dog, right? Or my time with Jesus be, I drop the kids off and I know I have 20 minutes between where I drop them off and getting to work. Okay, 20 minutes, I'm not going to put anything on the radio. I'm not going to call anybody. I'm just going to be present in that drive with Jesus, right? Like, so you're actually doubling up things. I think sometimes with it, is there a way to double I mean, we were chatting before this, like the idea of running and listening to a podcast, right? Or could I go for a run and spend time with Jesus? Yeah. Like, or how do I combine things? I think even the emotional health and coming into it, like, is there a way that I can double up with something I'm already doing and it be, so time with a friend that feels like I got to spend time with my friends to keep the relationship. Well, can that also be a space where you find emotional healing, where you get raw with questions like we were just talking about? Yeah. And so that's where, because I mean, we're all running at the light speed nowadays.
Yeah. And I would say, this is more of an answer for myself than it is for Catherine as well right now. Cause I'm like, man,
you're in the middle of it, man.
Trying to do all these things is like, yes, it's holistic, but it doesn't mean that all areas are going to be at a 10 all the time.
Yeah.
Right. There are times where it flexes and you're like, man, honestly, right now, health physically is on the back burner because this is more of what I need right now. And it's not, I'm not giving up on that, but I'm going, okay, for this season, I really don't have time to be focused on my health physically. Or there's times that naturally they just have to stop. There was a time where I was spending a lot of times lifting weights, and I lived right next door to our Prescott Valley worship leader, worship pastor Caleb, and we were working out every day, and I hurt my shoulder and I couldn't lift weights anymore. And I just had to I had to back burner the physical health in order to push forward other things. I didn't can it. But sometimes holistic doesn't mean that all of them are perfect at all times.
Well, and two things come to mind as you say that. Like the first one is evaluate. Like we were just talking about what we would do spiritually, like where am I actually at, right? Like I think evaluating, holding these areas and going holistically, where needs attention right now, and where, like in your season. So with my wrist, I haven't been able to do the exercise stuff that I normally would do for about 1.5 years. And so I've known I'm losing muscle, but I'm going, okay, in this 1.5 years, then I'm going to eat differently, right? I'm not going to eat at the same consistency I was when I was able to work out at the level I wanted to.
Right.
And so that's one way of going, okay, I know I can't do the physical workout stuff, but I can physically help my body by not. I love sugar at night. I don't know if everybody's wired like that, but I'm not going to go and pound sugar at night, because I'm not able to work it out the same, or, cholesterol kicked in. And so I'm going to eat differently because of that, but I'm also going to be wise that I'm not putting on weight in a season when I can't. And so I just think there's a lot of it, especially like for me, you've been front row seat to it. A lot of my healing over the last 4.5 years now is emotional. And so I've had to work in, I'm going to go sit with a counselor, and then I'm going to do the work between visits. And that's come at the expense of some of the physical stuff. That's come at the expense. But if we're evaluating, I go, man, I feel so much more holistically healthy.
Yeah.
And so evaluation, and then I would say, what can you double up?
That's good. That's good. Well, if you have a question that you would like for us to answer on the show, again, please email this. It can happen anytime. You're thinking about it, send us an email.
We got to get a text number. Is there a way to, maybe David knows, is there a way to text?
There is not right now, but
can you
maybe
DM
we'll
us?
have that. You can
DM
DM
us.
us.
There you go.
Yeah. All of our social media, send us a DM or email us unedited@heightschurch.com. However you want to get your question to us, we'd love to answer your question on the show. And you have made it to the end of the podcast right now. There you go. They look forward just to hearing you do that. That's the reason people stick around, so they can hear the sound from.
Or that's the point they hear you saying the first part. They're like, we're done.
That's good. Well, you heard it here today from Grandpa John, PJ.
Grandpa John.
I don't know.
Yeah, what do you do now with PJ?
I don't know. We'll keep them both. Yeah.
Papa John's now? Is that what that becomes?
Oh, there we go. That's good. Well, thank you guys so much.
Somebody did that to me this weekend.
Did they?
Yeah.
Okay.
They combined PJ with Papa John. Yeah.
There we go.
So thanks for that.
That's perfect. Well, maybe we have more reason now to keep it. Thank you guys so much for being with us, for listening to us. Just know you're loved by us, and we are so grateful that you choose to spend time with us, and we can't wait to see you guys next week. Share this with somebody, rate, review, let us know what you think. Love you.
Bye, guys.